The ballroom shimmered with elegance that evening, its golden chandeliers casting warm light across marble floors polished to a mirror's shine. Laughter and chatter filled the air, accompanied by the graceful music of a live orchestra. Couples glided effortlessly across the dance floor, dresses swaying and shoes clicking in rhythm. To the world, it was a night of glamour, celebration, and wealth, a perfect picture of joy. But in the far corner, almost hidden by towering flower arrangements, sat the CEO's daughter. She was young, her dress just as beautiful as the rest, her hair carefully styled, but her wheelchair set her apart. Her eyes followed the dancers with quiet longing, the kind that spoke louder than words. She wanted to be out there, spinning under the lights, laughing with everyone else, but her body refused to obey. People noticed her, but only for a fleeting second. They offered polite smiles from a distance, quickly looking away, unsure of what to say or how to act. No one stopped. No one asked. It was easier to pretend they didn't see her than to risk the discomfort of stepping into her world. As the music swelled, she folded her hands tightly in her lap, pressing back the sting of tears. To everyone else, this was the most magical night of the year. But to her, it was another reminder of how cruel invisibility could feel, not because she wasn't there, but because no one truly saw her. The CEO stood at the center of it all, his presence commanding the room. Guests flocked to him, eager to shake his hand, exchange pleasantries, or secure his attention. He responded with a charming smile, nodding politely, lifting glasses in toasts. To anyone watching, he looked like the picture of success, confident, powerful, untouchable. But behind those carefully rehearsed smiles, his heart ached. Every few minutes, his eyes drifted to the far corner of the ballroom, where his daughter sat alone. She had begged him not to host another grand gala, but he told her it was necessary. These events kept his empire alive. Yet, now, watching her sit in silence while the world whirled around her, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. He had all the wealth, influence, and power a man could dream of, yet none of it could buy what his daughter needed most: acceptance. He had hired the best doctors, invested in therapies, built a life of comfort for her, but nothing eased the isolation she felt when people looked past her, too afraid or too busy to simply treat her like every other girl. He clutched his glass a little tighter, a quiet storm building inside. The laughter and applause that surrounded him felt hollow, mocking. He could command a boardroom, sway markets, and silence rivals with a word, but in this moment, he felt utterly powerless. Because the one thing he couldn't give his daughter was the one thing she craved most. Near the edge of the ballroom, away from the glittering crowd, stood a man who didn't quite belong. His suit was plain, not tailored like the others, and his shoes carried the marks of long days at work. He wasn't there for prestige or networking. He was a single dad, invited only because the small company he worked for had received a rare pass to the gala. To him, the chandeliers and crystal glasses felt more like a world he was borrowing than one he belonged to. As he sipped quietly from a glass of water, his eyes scanned the dance floor. At first, he admired the spectacle, the couples moving in perfect rhythm, the polished smiles, the shimmering gowns. But then, his gaze shifted toward the corner. He saw her, the young girl in the wheelchair. Unlike the others, he didn't look away. He noticed the way her eyes followed the dancers, the faint smile she forced when people glanced at her, the loneliness tucked behind her carefully composed face. To him, it wasn't her wheelchair that stood out, it was the sadness she tried to hide. He thought of his own daughter at home, how she too sometimes felt left out when the world seemed too big, too busy to notice her. That familiar ache tugged at his heart. While everyone else saw a wheelchair, he saw a girl who simply wanted to belong, to be seen, to be part of the joy swirling around her. And in that instant, he knew, he couldn't just stand there. The music swelled, violins filling the air as couples glided in perfect harmony. The single dad took a deep breath, his heart pounding, and stepped away from the shadows. With every stride across the polished floor, He felt the weight of curious stares, guests whispering, wondering why this ordinary man was moving with such purpose. But he didn't slow down. His eyes were fixed on her. When he reached the corner, he knelt slightly, bringing himself level with the young girl. She looked up, startled, unsure why this stranger had approached her. For a moment, he simply smiled, warm, genuine, unforced. Then, softly, he asked, "May I have this dance?" Her lips parted in disbelief. No one had ever asked her that before. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she whispered, "But, I can't." He shook his head gently. "You can. Let me show you." Slowly, he wheeled her chair onto the dance floor. The room hushed, the music still playing but the crowd frozen in silence. Then, with every beat, he guided her in gentle circles, twirling her as if her chair were just another pair of graceful steps. He lifted her hand, swaying with her, making her part of the rhythm she had always longed to feel. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. She was radiant, her laughter ringing out, her smile brighter than the chandeliers above. And in that moment, the ballroom wasn't watching a girl in a wheelchair. They were watching a dancer. The final notes of the orchestra faded, but no one moved. The ballroom, once filled with chatter and noise, was now wrapped in silence, broken only by the sound of thunderous applause that suddenly erupted. Guests stood to their feet, clapping, some even wiping tears. For a moment, all the masks of wealth and pride fell away. What they had just witnessed was something money could never buy. The CEO stood frozen, his chest tight, eyes glistening as he watched his daughter beam with joy. It had been so long since he had seen that smile, the kind of smile that wasn't forced, but born from pure happiness. His empire, his millions, his endless power, none of it had given her this. Yet here, in front of everyone, a simple man with nothing to prove had given her the one gift he never could, the feeling of belonging. The girl, cheeks flushed, held the single dad's hand tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling but filled with light. He only smiled, replying softly, "You deserve this dance." In that instant, the CEO understood something life-changing. True wealth wasn't in his name or his fortune. It lived in acts of compassion, in the courage to see someone's heart instead of their limitations. That night wasn't remembered for the contracts signed or the money raised. It was remembered for a single dance, one that turned loneliness into hope, silence into applause, and a forgotten girl into the brightest star of the ballroom.